Welcome to Mayor Brown's International Arbitration Across the Pond podcast. Each episode is designed to provide insight on legal issues and other matters affecting international arbitration in the UK, US and around the world. The podcast is presented by two of Mayor Brown's international arbitration partners, Kwadwo Sarkodie from the firm's London office and Charles Harris from the firm's Chicago office. You can subscribe to this podcast on all major podcasting platforms, as well as Mayor Brown's YouTube channel. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
Welcome once again to the Across the Pond podcast, where we continue our exploration of the exciting developments across the world of international arbitration. And so in this third episode of Series 2, Chucky and I will be looking at AI. In particular, we'll be exploring how AI, which we're constantly being told is transformative in so many areas, might impact the world of international arbitration. And as we grapple with this, we are particularly fortunate to have with us as a guest Andrew Barton of the AAA, the American Arbitration Association. We hope that Andrew can share with us some of his key thoughts and insights on AI, arbitration, particularly in the context of the brand new, just launched offering from the AAA, the AI Arbitrator. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Can you please give a few words of introduction to us and our listeners? Just give us a bit of a sense about what you do and what you plan to share with us today.
Certainly. My name is Andrew Barton. I am a commercial vice president for the American Arbitration Association. I started with the company in 1995 and have worn many different hats in that time frame. Most recently, myself and a group of about 20 AAA staff members moved into a new project called the Digital Dispute Resolution Center project. That's an internal name for us, which includes the AI Arbitrator. And what I hope to do today is talk just a little bit more about our intentions with AI Arbitrator, the challenges, and hopefully be as transparent as I can about the stumbles we may have made over the last couple of years and sort of the best practices coming out of those challenges that I think we've overcome to a large extent.
Fantastic, Andrew. Well, look, we really look forward to hearing about that and delving into that a little bit more deeply with you. Before we do so, though, I will throw over to Chucky for the usual and important section of every podcast. What's the title going to be?
Right. And so, look, we would be remiss if we didn't figure out this title by using AI. So I typed in, what I did is I use our generative AI tool the firm uses, and typed in a little bit about the subject matter, and it actually spit out a bunch of potential titles. But I just want to talk about just a few of them and get your impressions on both you, Kwadwo and Andrew, on which one you like. So here we go. AI on the docket, AAA's Arbitrator of the Future. Robo-gavel, ? AI Arbitrator debuts. AI in the hearing room, what AAA's model means for counsel. And finally, beyond human judgment, ? AAA's AI Arbitrator on trial. Any of those? Like I know.
Yeah.
Well, before we pick one, Andrew, does that sound like a good selection? And do you think that your AI arbitrator could come up with anything better?
Well, let me be politically correct and say, I like the titles that don't set us up to challenge any existing dispute resolution models, and that might encourage thought around other use cases or other access to justice caseloads that aren't otherwise being served by the current dispute resolution processes in place. So maybe I would throw each of those titles back in with an additional prompt to try and develop something along those lines. But I'm here to talk about anything you all want to talk about. Again, I want to be as transparent and as honest about what AI Arbitrator is, and most importantly, what AI Arbitrator is not today.
Okay. Well, look, that's a good segue into our discussion today. So first of all, I mean, just tell us generally what AI arbitrator is and what it means in practice.
Certainly. And if I could, let me back up and just say that our AI journey really started around the same time as both ChatGPT coming out, as well as Bridget McCormick becoming our new president and CEO, who really challenged a 100-year-old organization, right? Who is very comfortable in the way we were operating to engage AI at a level that was really at a breakneck speed. We got everybody behind an enterprise license. We told everybody to begin learning how to use AI, how to manipulate AI, et cetera. And then from that point, we have been integrating different external components to dispute resolution. And we'll explain in a bit, we're operating sort of on two different systems, a legacy system of our case management, and now this new digital dispute resolution center. And so we're not marrying the two, but we're adopting technologies that can create efficiencies now in our legacy while we're building out the digital dispute resolution center natively, as we talked about in the opening.
Okay, so I think, so we'll talk a little bit more about this AI arbitrator being limited to construction disputes later on. But why don't you just generally walk us through what happens from filing to award with the AI arbitrator?
I was looking back through the workflow, anticipating this question, and I realized that we have built if you were to file a case today, the existing or the new platform that we have built looks very much like or includes the same steps as a traditional arbitration if you would file via paper, in the sense that the parties would file a demand for arbitration, giving us the basic information about the case. The respondent would have an opportunity to opt in. That's another very important part of this initial process, that both parties are engaging voluntarily. So respondent would put in their information, and then we open up the submission stage. So claimant submits their position statement, any legal authority, any exhibits, et cetera, what it is they're claiming in arbitration. Respondent would have an opportunity to respond to that. And then at that point, a human arbitrator is being appointed by the AI system. And right now we have a round robin of 9 construction arbitrators who were recruited specifically for this caseload. They then are waiting on the parties to validate the AI summaries. The parties have been working with AI during their submission phase, and they're validating the outputs so that when the human arbitrator is appointed, they're confronted with human validated. The advocates are comfortable with what AI arbitrator has summarized and reasoned and analyzed, so that the human arbitrator then can more quickly kind of delve into the subject matter. The arbitrator then works with AI, editing claims, potentially, or accepting what AI arbitrator has produced. And then they issue a final and, we think, binding award with the human signature, right? So AI is not delivering the award. It is not saying to the human arbitrator, this is the final award and now you must sign it, right? We haven't gotten to the robo aspect of this just yet. And so the human has complete control all the way through the process, which is really neat. And then I was just going back through the demo the other day and recognized that the human arbitrator can even delete the entire award summary and start from scratch, because they'll have access to both the summaries and the original documents if they just don't think something was quite right.
Okay, thank you for that. A couple of questions about the process. So when somebody starts a case by filing a demand, and at what point do the parties get a chance to opt in? And is there, that's one question. And secondly, is there a monetary threshold to the cases where they're allowed to opt in?
Two great questions. When can parties opt in? That I think is going to be a part of my job. When parties want to use the system, or if claimant, for instance, has reached out to us and said, we potentially have a case, but we'd like for you to explain it to the other side, that certainly is an opportunity to do so. But I think it'll be a conversation among advocates before it comes to the AAA, so that each side, so that we're not spending time educating a party with claimant waiting on our education piece of that. So I hopefully, with the information that we're providing on our website and conversations between advocates, they will come to us voluntarily, and it'll be relatively quick and hopefully painless to get them into the system. And then Chucky, I apologize. What is the second part of the question?
Monetary threshold? Is there
Well, it is built currently on document, or it was trained on document-only construction cases, and the presumption on documents-only cases, and probably the majority of those cases anyway within the traditional AAA, probably come at $75,000 and less. But and I think we'll get into this a little bit more in detail, the AI arbitrator was trained in reasoning, not necessarily to cut off any sort of dollar amount or any sort of argument that might be made within those documents only cases. So I don't want to jump into the next question, but on the high level, AI arbitrator was trained on nearly 1,500 closed construction document only cases. And then from that 1,500, a subgroup was then annotated by human arbitrators, essentially breaking down how they would attack the case, how they would analyze the claims, and how they would reason to an award. And through data engineers, language model engineers, prompt engineers, et cetera, AI arbitrator is this is, I've eyes kind of perk up when I say AI is reasoning in the background in order to present to the human arbitrator something that makes sense, right? So it's less about the dollars, and it's less about the complexity, although the caseload that we selected is typically one or two issues at most, and typically tied to smaller dollar claims.
So Andrew, in terms of what you've just described and the sort of claims that this is certainly being used at the moment, what was that a particular demand or a pain point that you'd identified that you thought could effectively be addressed? Or really is this just something you see as more suitable for the proof of concept, i.e. start on documents only, start on relatively low value, but with a use case potentially that could go much wider in future?
Right. I think we could have waited a couple of years and come up with a broader application to this initial launch. But I think internally we recognize that, I think we realized we wanted to be cautious, firstly. I think we also recognize the challenges in the legal industry, us included, in terms of adoption, especially when you don't even have the courts recognizing things like AI transcription without some form of human validation in that process. we couldn't boil the whole ocean, the entire ocean at once. And so we had to start somewhere. Our relationship with the construction industry broadly dates back to 1937, when the AIA documents first included dispute resolution. And then our relationship was again fostered in 1967 or 63, somewhere right around there, with a group called the National Construction Dispute Resolution Council or Committee. And so we understand the construction industry. And so it made it more logical for us to start in an industry where we've had a long reputation.
Well, yeah, that's particularly interesting to hear for me because my background is construction disputes. That's what I deal with every day. And certainly we see a lot of disputes on construction contracts which are about payment, late payment, for instance. Right. And certainly in the UK, but also on international contracts where there's a dispute adjudication board or a DAAB, we see adjudication for those sort of disputes. So there's and for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with construction, that's just to explain that's a dispute resolution process. In England and certain other jurisdictions, it's statutorily compulsory for construction contracts. In many other jurisdictions, it's optional to be written into the terms, but that provides for a usually documents only fast track process for resolving disputes, and that's often used particularly for disputes around late payment and so on. And so I can see certainly in the construction industry gives rise to volumes of these sort of disputes. They're numerous, they're frequent on the contract, but they can often be dealt with through documents. So I can certainly see offerings such as this as having the potential to facilitate and speed things up in relation to construction contracts. Is that what you're seeing? Do you think that this is something that's going to get a wide take up in the construction industry?
Well, I think so. I think one of our obvious first challenges is finding that first case where the parties feel comfortable with what we have laid out. And I think as we continue kind of educating the public that we are not trying to supplant the authority of a human arbitrator with AI, or that we're trying to force feed our parties into that. I think we launched AI arbitrators only been live just a couple of days, November 3. So it'll be interesting to see how parties begin to interact with it. We've seen a few people sort of log in and then back out, the morbid curiosity of what this thing is that we've built. But they can't get very far. So I'm hoping they're going to follow up with a demo request or something of my office, which is obviously available to anybody if you just call and ask for it. But I think there's going to be the construction industry, as you know, is very forward thinking, and they embrace, at least the industry embraces technology within their industry. And I think they're going to be pushing for these interim type of workflows that maybe, maybe you could tell me, would it be more beneficial to have a binding decision rather than an interim suggested sort of resolution that would then potentially have to be at least enforced or otherwise argued, versus an interim or a final award within the construction project. I don't know, but DRBs here in America, I think are used probably not as frequently as they could be, right? Because it does help move that project along, and you're solving issues as they come up rather than saving them for the end, where it's much more expensive to hold on to those claims until the very end. So I'm hoping that we do take cues from the international community in more ways than one. And this is one example that I hope that a use case comes out of.
Yeah, that's really agreed. And I can certainly see the benefits of it. And yeah, and it's great to see you getting the message out and hopefully spreading the word internationally about how this could be of benefit to contracts, not simply in the US, but across the world.
Absolutely.
So Andrew, let's step back a little bit and let's talk a little bit more about the development. So you mentioned that you use 1,500 construction awards to train your model. But let's just, like I said, let's just talk a little bit about the process. So I know you used McKinsey's, is it Quantum Black team?
That's correct.
Develop it, okay. And you described the model as AI native. Now, what do you mean by that?
At the high level, as we're talking about this, certainly the questions that come up or the immediate shout downs, as I might be presenting a slide, is AI hallucinates, right? AI wants to please you, and it will go out into the universe and find information or make up information to satisfy what your question was or what it thinks you're trying to solve. And so I think it's really important to recognize that, first of all, ChatGPT just on its face has gone from version 1 to 5.0 in a matter of 2 years, and we've seen the leaps and bounds and the advancements it has made. But an AI native arbitrator operates, and let me back up and say, so this isn't a retail model of ChatGPT, right? This is AI native, as your question alluded to. AI native essentially, for our purposes, means that AI arbitrator was built within a system that is AI, that is built, purpose-built, I suppose. It's not a bunch of external models that are slapped onto an existing workflow. We built it from the ground up, trained the AI arbitrator from the ground up so that we don't have to plug in any type of external assistance, if you will. It also, I think, is important to note that within this system, it is a closed AI system. So referencing back to the ChatGPT hallucinations, et cetera, AI arbitrator only operates within the data that is being produced by the parties. So we're not going external. AI arbitrator is not allowed to go out and do external legal research. That is for the parties to provide. And within this AI native system, you're much less prone to errors or drift. Of course, you've got to build in the audits. You've got to build in the governance for anything like this, which we have done. And within probably the next week or so, we will have an entire technical FAQ up on our website. I just looked at it today. It's 17 pages of technical jargon. And so the challenge to our engineers is put that in regular human, right? Let's show them 17 pages, but let's also sort of distill it down to what they need to know or want to know to create confidence and, again, to be as transparent as possible.
Okay, thank you. So you said it's a closed system. Are the decisions that you get through the AI arbitrator when parties start adopting it, are those going to be included?
Those will not. We have the data, right? AI arbitrator has been trained. Now, I think the interesting question will be in a year or 2 years or 3 years. And I don't know if we know this or not. I imagine our tech teams have thought about how we will keep AI arbitrator up to date, right, which will require new data. But any data that's supplied to the AI arbitrator platform, as well as that human validation that I mentioned, no, your AI arbitrator didn't parse my claims quite as succinctly as it should have, that kind of feedback, that will be used to better the model and to better train future prompts of all of the different AI modules that are interacting with the various aspects. I think that's the best answer I can give for now.
What were your considerations in choosing the 1,500 construction awards that you chose?
Well, they needed to be complete. So unlike other models that you might see now, or that you may see in the future, ours was trained on the entire case as well. I mean, so as you all know, there's papers that are filed throughout the entire arbitration. And so in order to train AI arbitrator how to get through a case, how a human might move through a case and begin to analyze and reason through the position papers and legal arguments, et cetera, we think the complete caseload, or the complete case from start to finish, is equally as important as simply scraping awards that have been confirmed in a court of law, because that award does not tell you the whole story, right?
So, Andrew, one thing I noted reading in a bit about the background on this was I saw a mention of the structured legal prompt library. Now, that all sounds a bit technical to me, but would you be able to just explain how that works and how that interacts between the claims and submissions and what's ultimately produced?
The way I understand it is it's essentially a rule book for our AI arbitrator, there's actually more than one rule book for the AI arbitrator, so that when the AI arbitrator is faced with any particular issue or design that the AI needs to follow the workflow of, they can go into this library and pull out how it's been trained so that it can specifically follow that model. That's the way I understand it. And I get that that's probably a very high altitude answer for you, but that is essentially, again, sort of the workbook for the AI arbitrator. And you can pull those out if you do determine that there is drift, or there is evidence of procedural bias, or something that our human arbitrator is also alerting to. We can pull that particular book and work on that.
So that's essentially part of your sort of quality control or verification sort of process.
That's correct. That's correct.
So one thing you emphasized earlier when you were talking about the process is that humans remain ultimately in charge of what the decision will be when they're issuing the award. So you gave us a little bit of this, but I just want to kind of index a little bit on what type of human oversight is the process, or do you have in the process? It's a little bit about what humans actually do, what the arbitrator.
Right. Do we still have a purpose? Yes, we do. And you know what? Let me just say this. I think even if tomorrow we told you that AI arbitrator could behave autonomously, which I think personally it could. The human is a very important aspect, not only for the adoption period of this, but there will always be caseloads and needs for humans to be involved in this process. And we recognize that. And so our goal is, again, not to create something that we are going to push and dispose of all of our human capital. But essentially, if you recall to my description, claimant uploads everything. They then have complete control of what it is that the AI summary is producing for the eventual AI arbitrator and human arbitrator to measure. Respondent gets the exact same opportunity. And I'm telling you, they can delete, they can rewrite, they can regenerate. They have total control over that AI output. Once the human arbitrator is engaged, I'll tell you this, the 9 arbitrators who we selected to do this, they all have law practices. They all are partners in firms. They are people with reputations. And so they are, I guarantee you, will be dotting their I's and crossing their T's with what AI is putting in their hands. Additionally, if you recall, through different tabs across the top, they can dip back into the original submissions if they want a little more clarity or if they think something's not quite right, as I mentioned before. So they have complete control over what it is they are actually deciding and ultimately rendering as their final award. So much so that they can delete, as I noted, the draft award presented to them by the AI arbitrator, and they can take it offline, draft their own award, and put it into the system, and that will be the award of the human arbitrator.
So those 9 arbitrators, how are they paid? Is it a flat fee, or is it, their typical rates?
It is. The way the pricing structure now is, if claimant has a claim, it's $2,500. We are paying our arbitrators out of that fee. And whatever's left over, the association, I suppose, keeps the lights on. If respondent has a claim, they would also pay a flat fee of $2,500. And that's it as of now. And then I think as we see different use case scenarios, such as the modified DRB, a non-binding process, early neutral evaluation, or even early case evaluation, I think you'll see different pricing models reflect what the market is willing to purchase. And then I think you could even get into hybrid models where you could only hire the AI arbitrator to get you, in your minds, maybe 85% of the way there, enough to begin settlement conversations or things like that. It really is fascinating. And I just was chatting with someone the other day. They have this is all anecdotal and it's all sort of hypothetical, but he said, if I've got a tribunal, can we hire the AI arbitrator as the 3rd member to the panel? And I said, I had to, just kind of say, slow down. Let's just slow down for a second. Let's make sure this thing works first before we get too excited. But it's a brave new world, and we really don't want to misstep. And so we hope that by being open about what it is we're offering and the baby steps that we're taking, that we bring you along, and also that we hear you and your feedback and can tweak that model so that one day there will be a use case that says we're perfectly comfortable with however we've developed it.
So Andrew, in that vein, I noted you mentioned a little bit earlier about how the AI arbitrator produces a reasoned decision. And I think that's going to be key in terms of instilling confidence and so on. So what I was really wondering is that genuine reasoning in the sense that a human would understand it? Or, and this is something I've heard in relation to other AI systems, and say it may not apply to yours, but is that if you ask for reasoning, what it will essentially give is an approximation of what it understands a human would be able to interpret with regard to reasoning. It won't give you the steps by which it actually reached the decision. So right. To what extent does that apply to your system? And therefore, when you describe the decision as reasoned, in what true sense is that actually the case?
I'm going to talk possibly a little bit out of school here, because I don't want to give you a non-answer or to tell you to wait for the technical FAQ, page 15, subsection 3 of, et cetera. This is not generative AI. The way I have understood it and the documents that I've read, we have followed guidance from external. This has been a very expensive process for us to develop. And what essentially has been developed is an agentic AI closed system, right? An agentic AI can do more than, or performs differently than generative AI. So when you're training the models, here's sort of a kind of a very simple way, I suppose, of trying to describe it. If I had 100 arbitration awards and cases sitting before 2 arbitrators of equal background, largely, and they've all been trained in construction, let's say, human decision making and reasoning would tell you that those 2 human arbitrators would agree substantially about 75 to 85% of the time in their final decision making. And AI arbitrator has been trained in the logic and the reasoning of humans through that annotation process that I mentioned earlier. And comparatively, she's operating, sorry for assigning the pronoun, AI arbitrator is operating at about that 80 to 85% rate. And that's not an accuracy rate. And that's why I'd like to wait for the FAQ, because people tend to think of AI just in terms of accuracy. And that really is not how AI arbitrator was built. Obviously, accuracy is a part of it, but that's not how the reasoning was necessarily built. So AI arbitrator is operating, we think, based on the models and the guidance and the engineers, in a way that mimics or mirrors human reasoning as closely as it can for now.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, you could.
Yeah, because
I'm also very cognizant not to say anything that's going to get me in trouble with our.
No, and we'll look out for the FAQ as well.
Yes, yeah, I will get that into your hands as soon as I have it.
Andrew, are you aware of any jurisdictions that require arbitrators to be natural persons? Is that, or natural people?
Well, I think yes, I think every probably jurisdiction does, and I think what we've seen, or what we are getting ready to witness, is a case out of California where one party has attacked an award accusing accusing the arbitrator of utilizing too much AI, right? And having actually sort of broken that ethical obligation to render their own decision and not hand off the responsibility to AI. So I think you'll see the need of courts to have that human overlay for the near future. I think, again, probably to drive it home, or possibly in terms of adoption, I had to sort of kind of break someone down the other day and say, look, if it makes you feel better, everyone is using AI to some degree now, right? And in our traditional arbitration workflow, we've introduced AI, or excuse me, yes, AI into the workflow as different products, whether it's AI arbitrator selection, or even before that, AI clause drafting, et cetera. But what we have never lost sight of is that it has to be a human decision at the end of the day. It has to be. And that's why we have left complete and total control to the humans, and why we would never declare today that the AI is actually, signing that award. They're suggesting an award, and it should be, and based on our testing, more times than not, the human in the loop is making very minor edits, and mostly format or grammatical ways in which they would rather say something, as opposed to the AI arbitrator. So it's been fascinating to watch and to recognize that AI arbitrators getting it pretty well, but the human arbitrator is there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So on that note, Andrew, I'd like to ask you for your thoughts on the issue of bias. And this is from two angles, I suppose. So the first is there a possibility of bias creeping into the AI process? And is that what the human arbitrator in your system is there to look out for and pick up on? And I suppose the other side of that is, might this actually serve to reduce bias, and perhaps an AI engine or the AI arbitrator might, in some cases, be able to render a less biased decision than a human arbitrator who's perhaps been exposed over the years to the same arguments time and time again and has formed certain preconceived ideas.
Right. We all walk around with our own biases, right? And how that, through the years, I've trained as one of our initial trainers for our arbitrators, hundreds, if not thousands of arbitrators. And the one thing that I always tell them is that I cannot get into your mind and help you get over any bias you might have. So you're just going to have to check that at the door, and we have to trust you in that you can set those aside. So yeah, there's two arguments to this, right? AI arbitrator, any AI arbitrator, I would argue, unless you built the model to be purposefully biased, does not walk into the room seeing anything other than the papers in front of it, right? They're also not susceptible to being tired, to having conflicts of interest that we've all garnered through our careers, et cetera. So that level of bias, I think, is kind of the cool side of it, in that because AI arbitrator is not also using previous cases to recognize or to learn for future cases, every case is therefore, AI arbitrator has not seen that party before, because, right, we're using zero data policies. It's flushed, and we're not using the data again to learn in the future. Back to the governance of just the natural drift, or if we do see bias either procedurally, or if it tends to, I don't know, if the human arbitrator kind of says, in these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 cases that I've already gotten, it tends to side with this particular argument more than this, whereas in my own practice, right, if this really doesn't make sense, then we're capturing that feedback from the human arbitrator as well. On top of that, and again, God bless the technical FAQ coming out soon, there will be descriptions of the ongoing governance and routine maintenance of AI arbitrator. And as I mentioned, there's different modules that will be participating so that it creates more efficiency in terms of resolution and better outputs, so that we don't have to bring the whole system down or retrain the entire model, but we can pull out those different aspects almost instantaneously and feed it right back in once cured.
Let's talk a little bit about how the tool might affect the broader arbitration community. So do you anticipate an arbitrator, it kind of touches on what you said with the California case. Can an arbitrator say, hey, even in cases where the parties in choose, I want to use this tool, I want to plug in the initial briefs, the response, reply, and see what this tool comes out with in order to help me draft my award? I mean, is that, you anticipate it being used like that, or do you have any concerns about that?
Yes. We know that we have 8,000 plus arbitrators on our roster, and there's no way to police what it is they are doing. We have issued very early on AI best use guidelines for our panel, and we have encouraged them to follow that. And essentially, it's designed to safeguard that award, right? The entire process, but ultimately the award. And so I think we are fans of any technology that creates efficiency. And let me give you one example. And let me finish that sentence first and say, I think our preference would be, hey, arbitrators, if this is a traditional arbitration, we've got tools. The parties, we are giving tools to the parties as well. So let's try and stay within the lanes through either our third-party partners, Optima Juris, that are offering AI transcription, to the AI arbitrator selection portal that parties now have an opportunity to do. But one thing that our arbitrators do have direct access to is a product now called ClearBrief, which during our testing, each of the participants suggested that it saves them between 8 and 10 hours when they employ this tool on their cases. And essentially, ClearBrief is an organizational tool that the arbitrator can kind of see the case, see the timeline, see the sites, and it helps them better focus when the time comes for them to do so. And 8 to 10 hours doesn't sound like a lot, but multiply that out to the tens of thousands of cases we handle every year. And that's millions of dollars and thousands of hours saved. So I think long story short, I think our preference would be our arbitrators use it for administrative, type functions, and certainly not merit-based decision making, which I think is what sort of the accusation out of that California case sort of boiled down to. They relied too much on AI to render their decision.
So how do you consider, I'm sure you thought about this, how do you see the tool potentially being used by people in private practice, just lawyers in private practice to, complement their representations to clients and create efficiencies?
Well, I think that's yet to be seen. We're all very excited about what ideas you all have as to what really the technology can do. We've dressed it up in arbitration, but there's a lot of value in the technology and how the technology was trained, I think, for law firms and other use cases that we're toiling around with. Just shooting in the dark here. Possibly one day it's a software as service sitting on your desktop, and you get an email that says, "Hey, we've got a problem. So and so's filing against us," or you get a letter from your opposing counsel saying, "Hey, we need to talk." You could potentially throw your case in as it sits and say, okay, this is where we stand now, right? or you can invite the other side in and begin those settlement conversations with sort of an instant view of how an AI arbitrator would view it if you plopped it in today. And earlier you mentioned the word access, and that's sort of a triggering term here, because access to justice is really also where I think AI arbitrator is moving. Certainly, we're recognizing that in smaller dollar construction disputes, that might open the doors to cases that might otherwise, walk away or file in small claims court, or otherwise just sort of, be absorbed by one party or the other. Imagine going beyond construction once we get there into other industries, or to court annexed mediation, or to, I mean, the effort, I think, we're tied to the effort. And so we are always going to be engineering and developing ways to push costs down, which I think is going to open access to justice to, many, many cases that we might otherwise be able to resolve, but due to the cost or the complexity that some parties don't feel comfortable with, right? You talk about, I could talk to a client about a $3,000 dispute, and how, if that's a B2B dispute, it might cost $3,000 in a traditional arbitration to get that decision, of which you're not guaranteed to win, right? So it's very important to us to allow those individuals with legitimate claims to have a forum in which to adjudicate those claims.
Absolutely, Andrew. So to get a bit more of a detailed sense of perhaps the efficiencies and savings, are you able to give an indication of how really the fees of the AI arbitrator would compare to the same dispute being dealt with in the traditional manner by a AAA arbitrator? So obviously, I expect, have got a sense of typical tribunal fees. You've got a sense of what fees parties would have to pay to the AAA and so on in the traditional arbitration. In a ballpark sense, give us a percentage, or you can give us an indicative dollar terms. What sort of difference are we looking at, and what sort of savings would parties be looking at just in that aspect?
Yeah, it's like telling you how many miles per gallon the car goes, because there's so many factors that go into the process. And I was really surprised, guys, to learn that even fast track or expedited arbitration within AAA, according to the rules, should be wrapped up within 60 plus days of the arbitrator's appointment. And statistically, our parties are moving us beyond that, with requests for postponement or delays, or legitimate needs that are pushing those statistics out further and further. So even our fast track cases, as we design them, are being somewhat manipulated so that the process moves a little bit farther out. On paper, and it will remain to be seen once we start getting cases in the door, but on paper, we think we're saving parties and advocates 25 to 35%, both in time and cost. The caveat is on, I think, 100% of the various screens that the parties will move through in this platform, there's always a help button, and parties can always, not always, but parties can pause the process for up to 5 days at a time, so that we, the administrator, here's the other human, can jump in and say, what's the deal? Why are we pausing this? What do we need to figure out? Because we know that we know that we're dealing with a creative group. And I got to tell you, after 30 years of talking about dispute resolution, there's not one day that goes by that I don't pick up the phone and am stumped by some creative question that an attorney will raise to something I've never thought about, or we may have never seen. And so it's you guys keep us on our toes, which is good, and especially helpful, I think, in this process as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit, Andrew, about the future of the tool and where you see it going. So as we discussed, right now, you're only using it for construction cases, but I assume there's a plan to expand your use. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And it's the conversation we're having right now within the organization. And where we're gating sort of our decision making is on data. I don't think that we would be very credible if tomorrow we just started rolling out industry after industry after industry, because we might start getting questions about, well, are you training it as fully as you did our construction AI arbitrator? And there are certain caseloads. I think eventually, you could build out the existing data set to handle multiple different types of commercial cases, generally speaking. But you want to make sure that you have a good data set for the next industry or the next caseload that you're rolling out. We used 1,400 plus, nearly 1,500 cases for construction. So we're looking toward what other caseloads can we get that data, which we think is important to train the language models, to have something for our engineers to work with, et cetera, for our arbitrators to annotate. So we're looking toward potentially the insurance industry. We've talked about the healthcare side of our house. Energy has brought up as another industry that is so embracive of, if that's I don't think that's a word, but embraces technology in their own industry, and might be pushing their counsel to become more efficient in how they engage us as well. So, and then perhaps a client or a potential client walks in with an idea about how to resolve 10,000 disputes in a month. How do we build that out? So it's partially driven by your feedback and partially driven by our data and what we feel comfortable in offering or telling you that we think it's the right time for the marketplace.
So, Andrew, as we approach the end of this podcast, one thing I'd like to get your thoughts on is, looking ahead 5 years, what would success look like for this initiative? And in your answer to that, if you could work in some thoughts on perhaps some of the more challenging use cases that this might be applied to in future. So handling live witness testimony, making assessments as to individuals' credibility and so on. Is that something that's feasible, or is that science fiction?
I'll start there, because I think that's the most fascinating part of where AI is probably headed. I have sat through several demos of companies wanting to import their technology into our process. And some of those companies are working on AI systems that can judge the credibility of a witness, right? Through whatever algorithms and sensors they have on their Zoom cameras, et cetera. So that's going to be sort of that fascinating development. Because right now, and I'm from Texas, so sometimes I'm a little crass when I describe this, but I don't think an AI can smell necessarily the argument that a counselor might be trying to pass off as as a legitimate claim. How is that for politically correct? Maybe so.
Well done.
Yeah. So 5 years in success, I think it would be I think it would be, did we address those access to justice issues? Did we create systems that allow caseloads that otherwise could not, whether it's through the courts or through the traditional arbitration system, those cases that could not be solved or resolved? That at least in my opinion, would be success. Whether we're making $1 or $1 million, I don't think we are concerned with at this stage. Now, hell, I mean, to the health of the organization, 5 years, if we're making $75 million a year doing this, I don't think anyone would complain. But that really is not sort of that first measure that we're looking toward, because we also recognize, it might, Charles, take more than 5 years before we ever see a return on investment. So we knew that going in. And I think everyone is, this is going to sound a little self-serving, but I think everyone is in a better position that sort of the world's largest provider with the most experience is not rushing to force feed this, that we recognize that we do need to take our time. There was a quote the other day I saw the other day that said, for a 100-year-old organization, AAA is certainly not acting its age, which I thought was great. And it's true, we're embracing it, but we have 100 years that we would never want to tarnish by pushing this too fast. So we've got the resources, we've got the time, we've got the money, we've got the staff. We're going to do this right.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Yeah, that's been really incredibly exciting listening to you set that all out. And certainly we're excited to see where this leads over the next 5 years and beyond. So before we wrap up, I'd just like to ask one final question. And you've done a pretty good job of doing this already, but I'm going to offer you one more if you like. And so that is to let us know if you could dispel one misconception or dispel one more misconception about AI arbitrators, what would that be?
Well, I think first and foremost that, again, I hear this in Texas a lot, BS. I'm not turning my case over for the AI arbitrator to render a decision. The AI arbitrator is merely moving or is merely taking largely the administrative tasks away from what the human arbitrator might otherwise be distracted with, and allows them to focus more so on the merits of the arguments. And so that's probably, I want people to understand that human is responsible for delivery of that award. It's their signature and their reputation on the line. I'm sure there's going to, I keep next to me, I have it somewhere in my clutter. I've been sharing it a lot with people at the AAA lately. It's a brochure that we produced initially back in 1995, and then the reprint was in 2001. And it's a picture of a baby on a brochure that as you open it up, we don't split the baby, but the statistics about splitting a baby are then front and center. And that came out of, even before I joined the association. And to an extent, we're still living with that myth of that arbitrators just split the baby. They're in there to just make the parties happy, thinking that that's going to increase their own personal caseload. So it'll be interesting to see what other myths or what other misconceptions as we get out and talk about this will be. The other one is that this is just simply built on generative AI, and you could plug it into ChatGPT tomorrow and get the same result. You will not. You cannot, and you will not. This is beyond that. So pretty cool. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all about it as well. And I'm sure I've left many people with a lot of questions. So reach out to me, please. I'm all over our website now, for good, bad, or indifferent. So.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely be following up on this, Andrew. It's all been incredibly interesting and something we're definitely going to follow closely.
Thank you.
And I agree. One more thing. So it sounds like you were saying at the beginning that we need to change our prompt when we go back and try to find a title. And I guess if I can summarize, you're essentially saying what I'm hearing you say today is that this tool doesn't really upset the way the decisions are made at this point. What it does is it facilitates. It does it more efficiently.
That's correct. And as you know, as we pointed to, you could throw it into ChatGPT and get some semblance of how, your case might be going, right? But being the native process that we've built on an agentic level as opposed to a generative level, yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on with that.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't know exactly how we end podcasts these days, but I've really enjoyed my time here immensely. Thank you to you and your staff and your firm as well.
Us as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have any suggestions for topics or want to reach Kwadwo, Sarkodie or Charles Harris, you can find them at the Mayer Brown website, mayerbrown.com. Also, to learn more about other Mayer Brown audio programs, please visit mayerbrown.com/podcasts. Thank you for listening.